This next question from Renee has to do with running. I'm training for my first full distance, and running is my weakest sport. I've completed some long runs, just running, and some incorporating walking with this. And generally, my run pace is not much faster than my walking pace. Can you speak more on finding a run-walk ratio for the marathon?
Hey, Renee, you're not alone. So I coach athletes who are kind of in the same boat, that they're, limited by their run. Running's their less experienced sport. And same thing, I look at their Training Peaks accounts, and sometimes I can't tell, were you running here or were you walking here? And so my experience with run walk ratios is to go to Jeff Galloway. I think he's like the big guru and kind of creator of different run walk ratios based on your current pace, predicted pace. So he has outlined, if you're going to run a 4-hour marathon, this is your ratio. If you're going to run a 6-hour marathon, this is your ratio of walking to running. So I've used that as my guide as I've coached various athletes. And it seems like the good standard to start with is, 2-to-1, 2 minutes run, 1 minute walk, and then go to 3 minute run, 1 minute walk, 4-1, 5-1. Those seem to be most consistent. I recently was coaching an athlete who was last year she was doing run 4, walk 1. That was working really well for her. And now she's running 2, walking 30. So she's basically doing the same ratio. Instead of 4-1, she's doing 2-30, and she's actually sped up by doing the 2-minute run, 30-second walk. Her overall times are faster than doing the 4-1. So again, it's just a matter of experimenting with yourself, checking that Jeff Galloway site based on your predicted marathon time, starting there, and seeing what works for you. I know it's important, though, when you do take those walk breaks, they're not, especially when you're racing, you're trying to get, to the finish line as fast as possible. You're not going to fully, just casually walk. You're still going to walk at a very steady, speedy pace, but it will give you some recovery time until you start your next run. And then generally the benefit of adding walk breaks is so when you're running again, you're running at a decent pace for you, instead of trying to do the Ironman, what's called the Ironman shuffle or the marathon shuffle, where, you're trying so hard to maintain a running pace. And in actuality, it's not really benefiting you because your form breaks down, you're shuffling. And like you said, you're not running much faster than if you were incorporating those walking breaks.
I know there's a heart rate element to that as well, on letting your heart take a break in that 1 minute or 30-second or 2-minute walking break. So it can help with possibly lactic acid buildup. So if you go hard for 8 minutes, for example, and then take a 2-minute walk or a 1-minute walk, your heart has a chance to recover. And then there's a slow, gradual build again with your heart rate for that first minute or so of the run of your next interval, in a way.
Yeah, and I want to mention one more thing. If you are planning on doing some walking breaks within your race, make sure you train that way. Yeah. It's really important, to have a race day plan and incorporate your plan. Make sure you're training that way. Don't just show up race day and say, oh, I think I'm going to walk. Have that plan, whether you're going to do 4-1, 5-1, so you start it right away. Because I've also coached athletes who have a plan to run 4 minutes, walk 1 minute, and then they get to the run, whether it's just a marathon or an Ironman marathon, and they just keep running. And then at the end, they're walking the last, 3 or 4 miles because they didn't incorporate those walk breaks that they planned initially, and their body just wasn't ready to run that full distance because they had been incorporating walk breaks in their training. You want to make sure you do that race day. And one more strategy that I do when I'm, especially in an Ironman marathon, is I only walk the aid stations. And so sometimes, depending on how I'm feeling, I'll start walking the aid stations right when I enter an aid station, because aid stations for an Ironman are fairly lengthy. And as soon as I exit, because this is a commitment I made to myself, I start running again. And then I'm running. I'm like, okay, I just have to run to the next aid station, and then I get to walk. So it all depends on how I'm feeling, how long I'm going to walk in that aid station. But I do take the time to walk the aid stations to make sure I get that nutrition in. And then it actually gives my legs a little break, and then I'm ready to run at a decent clip again.
I'll sometimes use the aid stations and hold a table or something, for example, to stretch or work, stretch my quads, stretch my calves, stop and touch my toes, work on my hamstrings a little bit, and that's kind of a good time helpful time for me. I haven't had issues in a while with cramping, but when I have, that's when I would do it. But those are some good markers. Like, okay, I know how far the aid station is in the full distance because they're usually 1 mile apart. Similarly, in halves, they're about a mile apart, depends on the race. But those are good markers. Like, okay, that's my next goal, and you break it down like that, make it more manageable for the distance.